우리 수고하신 모든 스태프들, 선생님들 모두 감사합니다. 큰 박수 한번 드립시다. 감사합니다. 예. 은혜가 많이 참 많았는데요. 그 중에 우리 한 학생이 나와서 하나님께 우리 감사의 간증을 하도록 하겠습니다. 우리 김찬율 소개합니다. 박수로 행해 주십시오. 예.
안녕하세요. 저는 김찬율입니다. This is my testimony about the 2024 LC Youth Retreat. If you had asked me before the youth retreat to describe how I was feeling, I would have probably told you that I was excited. However, this would have been a lie. In truth, I was scared of retreat and angry at God. I felt that even though I had called out to God for over a year before the retreat, with my struggles and wounds, God had ignored me. I assumed this retreat would be a moment of defeat for me, and that it would be the moment that I gave up on God ever coming back for me. However, God used this retreat to remind me that He never stopped loving me, even when I felt abandoned. Before the retreat, I had cried out to God to fill me with the joy and the peace that the Bible had promised, but instead was met with continued frustration and emptiness. I assumed that the joy I felt in church and at previous retreats had been because of emotions and community rather than a real encounter with God. And I gave up on Him. Nevertheless, God reminded me of His love for me through the worship sessions, sermons, and small group QTs. In the first worship session, I was pouring out my frustration to God when I remember God telling me, "Chanyer, everything at this retreat is for you." When I felt God telling me this, I realized that not only was God still with me, but He loved every single person at this retreat, including me, in a special, attentive way that only God could. This realization softened my heart towards God, and I slowly saw my prayers being answered left and right. My insecurities about friendships and what people thought of me were melted away when my friends prayed for me and encouraged me. My prayers for revival in our church were answered through sermons and worship services, where our church truly became alive for God. I was overwhelmed by joy, peace, and gratitude every time we worshiped the Lord. Despite all of this grace, though, each moment of joy came with painful questions. Why had God made me wait so long for all of this joy and peace? Where was all of this grace from God when I was desperately crying out to Him before the retreat? Even though God had filled me with grace, peace, and joy, these questions left a burden in my heart. Yet, God lifted all of this burden off of me. In a sermon about the prodigal son, Pastor D.C. Choi told us that sometimes God uses our suffering in order to allow us to empathize with our neighbor who might be suffering in the same way. Through this, God lifted this last burden off of my chest. God had been far from abandoning me. Rather, I realized He had given me a calling through these struggles. He was shaping me and challenging me to become someone who can empathize with those who are far from God, those who feel hurt by God. This filled me with the purpose, and I looked back at how far God had walked with me, guiding me not only to what was best for me, but also to those around me. Even though it's only been a few weeks since retreat has ended, the busy nature of the school year has already caused me to forget about the grace God has given me. I have fallen into stress, sin, and sometimes neglected God. Yet, through this retreat, God has given me a truth to hold on to in these times that I am overwhelmed. Even though I had given up on God and thought He had abandoned me, God is the one who loved me first, and His love will always be there for me. Thank you, and all glory to God forever and ever.
우리 찬율이는 얼굴만 잘생긴 줄 알았더니만 간증도 너무 은혜스럽게 잘하시네요. 감사합니다. 우리 한 번 더 찬율이께 큰 박수 감사합니다. 우리 찬율이뿐만 아니라 우리 모든 학생들